Anita Huggins has been the Charleston County School District Superintendent for a few months now. She tells me how the job is going for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Charleston County School District Superintendent Anita Huggins, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the superintendent of Charleston County Schools. And just recently, well, actually it's going on right now, the Charleston County School District is actually weeks away from passing its $847 million general operating funding budget for fiscal year 2025, according to WCBD. The proposed budget features a few standout priorities, including a $7,500 salary increase for teachers across every cell of the pay scale. You say that this would actually put the district at a roughly $55,500 starting salary, which brings them closer to the actual goal of $58,000. The proposed budget will also adjust all non-teachers and classify employees to 100% of the market value, and will account for a weighted student funding formula, which is the first in South Carolina. Employee pay raises will be made possible with a $3 million increase. So let me ask you this, Superintendent. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but how much more will the Charleston County School District actually spend for at-risk students with this formula?
Oh, Quintin, that's a great question. Thank you again for having me. I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity, so I'm so grateful for you hosting today, and to all your viewers. I thank them for tuning in here. So the weighted student formula, Quintin, is about a $32.5 million investment that Charleston is making for its children, particularly for those children that need more support based on whatever circumstances life has presented them. It's going to serve pupils in poverty, students with disabilities, and multilingual learners specifically. And so just in the weighted student formula alone is a $32.5 million investment across our district.
Yes, ma'am. And so what are the trends that you and your staff are looking at as far as, for lack of a better word, student behavior?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, Quintin. As you know, student behavior positively or negatively impacts a school climate. And so we track student discipline data. We track inside the classroom data, whether it be positive or negative. When students are referred outside of the classroom to administrative personnel for intervention and such, we track that. And we also are big proponents of restorative practices, working to build relationships with kids and helping heal conflicts between students, between adults, and between adults and students, quite frankly. So we track all kind of data, academic data related to the weighted student formula, also some behavior data, which could be positively or negatively impacted by the supports put in place by the WSF. And then apart from those things, we track positive and negative behaviors inside and outside of the classroom so that we figure out how to best serve all children.
Yes, ma'am. So post-COVID now, obviously kids are back in school full time. So what's more increasing? Is it positive behavior or is it negative behavior from an academic standpoint?
It's a great question, Quintin. We've seen all sorts of behaviors post-COVID. I would say the most notable thing we've seen a need for, though, are social emotional supports for kids who are struggling with mental well-being issues or other issues related just to overall health and wellness. And so we've seen more of those things emerge post-COVID than I'd say disciplinary behaviors, if you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. Where in the district do you see that the most happening with those outcomes?
You know, Quintin, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'd say pretty systemically, we've seen a need for more social emotional support from kids all the way from Allendale, McClellanville, and Mount Pleasant out to St. John's and Edisto. I mean, we've seen it pretty uniformly across the district, regardless of zip code. Kids have just needed more support mentally and socially and emotionally as they've recovered from the impacts of COVID.
How much money would you set aside for those particular types of outcomes with this particular formula?
Well, that's a great question, Quintin. What we've done is we've given principals wallets, and with their teams and some of their stakeholder groups, whether that be community stakeholders, school improvement councils, PTAs, we've asked them to tell us how they believe they can best utilize those funds to serve kids. Now, some of those supports, Quintin, may be in social emotional supports like social workers,
Yes.
mental health and wellness coaches, climate coaches, etc. I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but we do suspect that a portion of those funds will be dedicated to improving the wellness and overall well-roundedness of students.
Now, what percentage will that, well, how much of a percentage of that budget or the money that's actually going to those principals will go to the average students first versus the at-risk students?
No, all of the WSF funds, Quintin, are allocated to serve pupils in poverty, students with disabilities, and multilingual learners. So we really expect that principals and their stakeholder groups are going to be utilizing those funds to serve kids who we know, based on data and best practice, need more support to be successful.
Now, even with this formula in place, Superintendent, do you believe students will actually be classified as low income or poverty students?
So the state designates, Quintin, pupils in poverty. So that's a designation that we get through our work with the state.
Sure.
And so we utilize those numbers as we think about how to allocate resources to schools.
Now, Superintendent Huggins, let me ask you this. What percentage of the students right now are actually in poverty in Charleston County?
Great question. About half of the students, Quintin, about 25,000 students, over 25,000 students, which is right at 50% of our population, are pupils in poverty, multilingual learners, and or students with disabilities. So these funds are going to support nearly half of our student population.
Now, with that funding, Superintendent Huggins, do you actually have the ability to actually divide that money up and actually have, say, for instance, for lack of a better word, division teachers for those particular categories, for those particular students?
It's a great question. So what we did, Quintin, was look at the number of those numbers of students, groups of students at every school. And when we gave principals their wallets, it was based on the number of students in their school.
Wow. How many students are currently in Charleston County schools right now?
It's about 47, 5, about 48,000 if we round up. We typically say 50,000 because we do have a transient population, but about 48,000 students, Quintin. So 25,000 of that, as you can see, is a little over half.
Wow. So where exactly is this transient population coming from?
Quintin, we have a large transient population. Nearly 7,000 of our students are students who've acquired English as a second language, and so we're getting students from everywhere. We've got students who speak a variety of different languages. We're trying to hire more and more bilingual professionals to help support and advocate for our students and their families.
Now, I wanted to and I'll get back to that in just a second, but I wanted to ask you this, Superintendent, how exactly will this formula work as a part of a larger decentralization program? So
Quintin, that's a good question as well. Thank you for asking it. So the WSF is intended to give principals at the school level the resources they need to serve children based on what they know works in their communities and in their schools. In regards to decentralization, it's not necessarily linked to decentralization. Right. What we did was we made some reductions at the central level, and that may have been what you meant in your questioning. We made some reductions at the central level. We reallocated some budgets at the central level. We reduced some positions at the central level to be very transparent so that we could give money back to schools to fortify our classrooms, because that's really, post-COVID in particularly, very important to us.
Now, how many positions did you all eliminate altogether to send most of that money back to the schools and to the principals?
That's a great question, Quintin. We eliminated either vacant or, there were some people in positions. We did our best to help folks find positions that could still serve them and their families. It was very, very hard decisions. We eliminated or reduced about 52 positions. Some of those came from the GOFs. Other of those came from special revenue sources. But it was about 52 in all. About 30 of them came from the general operating fund.
Sure.
And again, many of those employees, we were able to find positions elsewhere in the organization where there were already vacant positions.
Okay, and I know about 75 Calhoun from Chip Zellinger's days when he allowed me to come over there.
Yes, yes, sir. I understand. I remember those days myself, Quentin. We're aging ourselves a little bit, though, I believe.
I'm just 39.
That's right, Quentin. Me too. Me too.
As you know, you've been with a long time in Charleston County School District employee. So with those eliminations of those positions, were those people who were in those positions for 20, 30 years that you just reshifted or say, hey, we unfortunately have to let you go to free up money to send to these schools?
So what's fortunate for us and the people's positions that we had to reduce is that many of those folks were able to go into positions that were vacant somewhere else in the organization, and their levels of experience with the organization varied from people who'd been with the organization, a year or two, to people who were more senior with the organization but that found themselves in different roles in the district.
Now, you talked obviously about those special revenues. How many revenues do you hope to create now with this weighted student formula?
So Quentin, we receive various special revenues from state and federal government, Title I, for example, Title II, for example. So the WSF, we don't intend for it to be special revenue. We intend to actually roll it into our GOF, our General Operating Fund, every year, and let this be the way that we begin supporting children. Now, it is important to me, Quentin, that we measure these things to make sure that they are making a difference for the children that they are intended to serve.
Well, I want to ask you this too. How many principals actually understand the rationale for and the workings of the WSF?
I would say all of them. We have met significantly since before. In fact, this idea originated out of a group of a very diverse stakeholder group that involved principals. And we have met with principals we've met with them regularly and consistently over the last 5 months as we were planning this, as we were working collaboratively with their teams, as we approved their plans, as we've worked with HR to make sure they get folks hired that they need to be hired. They work with their business managers on the CFO side. So if principals don't understand, I can't speak for all of them, but I would be shocked if there were principals that didn't have a fairly good understanding of this process, its intent, what's next, and how to measure these things that our next step is to determine how we best measure these things as we move forward.
Now, with HR and them obviously trying to fill those positions, how many more positions do you need to actually fill under this particular formula?
Well, I'm not sure the exact number, to be very honest. I'll check in with our HR officials and maybe email or message you back so you can follow up with that information for our viewers today. But many of the funds in the WSF will go to support additional resources for kids, which in many ways are people, interventionists, social workers, additional teachers, but some of them are also programs. So I can look into that and get back to you.
Now, what are the total programs that are going to be under this, for instance, this weighted student formula umbrella?
Quentin, there are a variety of things that principals could decide have well served their communities through ESSER. So if there were programs that are research-based, that have made a difference, that they have data suggest that works,
yes, ma'am.
They can continue those programs or request to continue those programs through the WSF. And those would vary based on what schools have requested.
Now, how many schools so far have requested that, Superintendent?
Quentin, we've got plans from every school in the district at this point. We have a plan for every school in the district. They've been reviewed. Some of them have gone back for revisions, and they've all been approved at this point. So we have mobilized our internal workings to make sure that the resources are there for our principals to be able to do whatever they need to do next, whether that be execute a contract with a vendor who has a program to serve kids, whether it be to onboard a new employee, or whether it be to offer training that's needed. So we've started the next steps, systems level steps, to support schools as we think about how this best impacts kids in the fall.
Now, I know you obviously have approved some of those plans, but how many more revisions do you have left to make it available to the public and put it online?
Quinn, at this point, we have approved them all. I'm really excited to say I work alongside of a talented hardworking group of people. Our principals, I put them up against any in the nation. They love kids, and they work really hard to get foolproof plans that they believe will serve their children. And we've, at this point, signed off on all of them.
Now, how much ESSER funds do you all have left in your budget?
You know what, Quintin, our ESSER funds sunset in September, and we're looking to expend all of them by September. As you know, a large portion of those, because I think you talked about this on one of your episodes, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity here. A significant portion of our ESSER funds over the last year and a half went to those $5,000 teacher bonuses. Yeah. And we were really excited to be able to provide those, and even more excited that the second reading of the FY25 budget includes that $7,500 increase to teacher pay and classified pay being elevated to 100% of market value, and many of our school-based classified positions being upgraded. So we're thrilled to be able to honor and recognize the work of those employees in the district who serve our kids so well.
So what was the market value prior to this formula being launched?
So Quintin, I'd have to get the numbers on that from Bill Brigman, who's our CHRO. You know, they did some external studies with partners to determine where we were, where we needed to be compared to the market, and how we might do that over time without breaking the bank. And so I think we were at maybe 96% of that, but let me confirm that and verify with you.
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm really proud that I serve alongside a board that is committed to increasing classified pay.
Do you believe the entire board will actually accept this formula in the end and this budget?
I am optimistic, Quintin, that this board, that individually, they all love children and they want to do what's right. And I'm optimistic that they will, that they believe that I do, that the budget, more so than I can speak to in recent history since I've been in this role and in other roles, is well aligned to our goals and is well aligned to where we want students to be. And so I'm optimistic that all of our board members will sign on. I'm at least hopeful that they will. I do believe I have a large majority, Quintin, that will inevitably sign off on June 24th.
Now, I want to get back to that as well in just a second, Superintendent. But what percentage of your principals will actually use their budget flexibilities, that is, and actually customize spending to better meet the needs of the students with this particular formula?
Quintin, I don't have evidence that none of them won't. Based on the thoughtful plans that they submitted to us and that we approved, I think 100% of our principals are determined to use this money for its intent, which is to serve children and children who need the most resources to better and be prepared for college and or career.
Now, Superintendent, who will you appoint, or will they appoint some sort of committee to make certain that there's an overall watchdog, if you will, over the money that's being actually spent right now?
What a great question. Our CFO, we put in place safeguards and systems so that we can report to our board monthly on the utilization of these funds. And it's going to be a cross-collaborative effort, Quintin. Not one department can manage all of this. It's going to be a partnership between our assessment evaluation team, our academic team, our associate superintendents, our finance, and our HR team. It's got to be. It's not until we all come together and work collaboratively can we ensure we're all moving in the right direction toward improving student outcomes.
Now, with all the schools here in Charleston County, how many associate superintendents will be assigned to these schools to make certain that this formula is actually working?
We have 4 associates, Quintin. Dr. Jennifer Swearingen oversees our elementary schools, Dr. Joseph Williams, our middle schools, Dr. Sherry Epplesheimer, our high schools, and Miss Jackie Haynes oversees our acceleration zone. Right. And working along with them are 3 executive directors in our elementary schools, a newly appointed executive director in our middle schools, Dr. Colleen Knauer, a newly appointed executive director in our high schools, Mr. Ryan Comeback, and a director, Ms. Colleen Carr, in our acceleration schools. We do intend to, by next Friday, announce 3 executive directors in our elementary schools to support Dr. Jen Swearingen and our elementary schools.
Now, will that be a part of the ESSER funds, or will this be a part of the budget for the formula?
It's part of the general operating fund, Quintin, okay. So it's really neither. We won't fund it out of ESSER, and we won't fund it out of WSF. We'll fund it out of the GOF.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I wanted to ask you too, how many is Charleston County School District schools, that is, will actually layer this particular weighted school formula on top of its long-standing allocations that actually reflect, say, the local context?
Quentin, that's a great question. It's really important for our viewers to know today that we're not taking money from any school to give to any other school. Schools continue to earn their base allocation. They continue to earn their Title I funding. They continue to earn their CSI funding, their ATSI funding. The WSF is layered on top of those resources. So no schools lose resources to give to other schools in this WSF budget item.
Well, let me just ask you a simplistic question, Superintendent. How exactly will this formula ensure equity?
You know what, Quentin, this formula is all about equity. Its very premise is equity, giving to students who need more. So schools' wallets are based on kids who we know historically and based on research need more to be successful, need more to get ready. Pupils in poverty, students who've acquired English as a second language, and those who have disabilities.
Now, I wanted to ask you this. You mentioned a lot during this particular interview, Superintendent, about training. How much would this actually cost the school district?
The WSF budget line item is about $32.5 million. And so it's something that we're planning for, and we're planning for over the next 3 to 5 years to make sure we can sustain it as we measure it to make sure that it's working. Now, we are going to partner with Edunomics up in Georgetown, a leading thought partner, Dr. Margarita Rosa, and we will travel to Washington, D.C., a group, and this is very important to me. I haven't traveled outside of Charleston for professional development in a very, very long time, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity to learning and growing alongside leaders around this in September as we travel up to D.C. and learn more and collaborate more with Dr. Rosa and her team around educational finance and how best to align the budget with measurable outcomes that determine programmatic and positional impact to the system. So I'm very excited about it, Quentin, and I'm looking forward to coming back and debriefing the public. I hope you'll have me back on this. I hope your viewership won't go down for me being here. You'll have me back, and we can talk about the things we're doing and how we're measuring things, and I'll be able to celebrate. Yes. Not anything having to do with me, but celebrate kids being successful in this system, which is long, long overdue.
Yes, ma'am. And I thank God for the viewership over the past 12 years. But let me ask you this. Obviously, this particular trip to Georgetown obviously will be on the taxpayer's dime. So why not just do the training on Zoom and actually train more people from that aspect?
Great question. So they don't offer this training via Zoom. So what they do offer is a 2-day in person, and then they offer Zoom follow-ups so that you don't have to consistently travel all year. So you'll go for a one-time, get the in-person, and then you'll have access to them throughout the year as we grow and we revise and we do all sorts of those things. You know, professional development is key to our work here in Charleston as we look to grow and develop leaders. And so this is a really important investment to make sure we get it right. Because if we don't measure $32.5 million worth of investment the right way, the taxpayers could be really angry with us. And we deserve to be held accountable for how we utilize this funding and how we measure outcomes associated with it.
Well, where exactly in the district will you see achievement gaps narrowing as a result of this particular formula?
We hope everywhere, Quentin. We've got achievement gaps in just about every school in the district between groups of students, whether that be students with disabilities and their peers, students who acquired English as a second language and their peers, and or pupils in poverty and their peers. So we see disparities everywhere from Mount Pleasant to North Charleston, to Hollywood, to West Ashley, and back around to McClellanville. Disparities exist throughout the district.
Well, I wanted to ask you this too, but how would this unfortunately create transportation problems if school choice were actually included?
So school choice is a whole nother sort of topic, Quentin, related. So ask me your question again.
Yes, ma'am. How would this create transportation problems if, for instance, I should say, school choice were actually included in this formula?
So this shouldn't create any transportation issues because it's not the way to student formula is to go to really support and fortify neighborhood schools. And so it's to make every school in every zip code a high quality school so that parents feel great about sending their kids there for their educational learning.
Where in the district do we have high quality schools right now?
We have high quality schools everywhere, Quintin. We really do. We've got pockets of excellence everywhere, and even in schools or districts where the state may not rate the school high performing, there are pockets of excellence. But we still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do until every child can read on grade level by grade 5, and until we're graduating 100% of students college and career ready. We will always have work to do in this system.
How many students do you foresee actually being career ready with this formula?
Our goal is 100%. Now, we're not going to get there overnight, but we are optimistic that we're going to graduate more college and career ready students this year. And that as we continue to support kids from early childhood up, we'll continue to graduate more and more in every cohort as our kids age and graduate.
Now, speaking of which, I know you're heading to a graduation tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir. We've got graduations tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday.
And what schools are those?
So tomorrow we are graduating students at, let me tell you really quickly, I don't want to miss one. The Early College High School starts in the morning at 8:30, West Ashley at 11, RB Stall at 3, and then we round out with School of the Arts at 7. Then on Friday, we're graduating Baptist Hill, followed by Military Magnet, Academic Magnet, and Wando. And then our last graduations on Saturday feature our graduates from North Charleston High School, James Island Charter High, Burke High, St. John's, and Lucy Beckham.
Yes, indeed. You're talking to a 2004 graduate of Burke High School here.
Yes, Quintin.
Love Burke High School.
Absolutely. Love Burke High School, Cheryl Swinton, and the great work that she's leading there.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't wait to see more exciting things from there. But
absolutely.
I know obviously Wando is one of your most top performing schools in the district. So what exactly is the graduation rate right now in Wando?
You know what, Quintin? I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm taking a few notes here. There are a few things I need to follow up with you on, and I can get back with you on that.
How many students in District 2 overall have actually graduated on time?
Quintin, I don't have any of those demographic or graduation information right here with me, but I can point you to that. Yes, and provide it for you. I can provide it for all of our high schools if you wish.
Yes, yeah. And I know you don't have the graduation rate, but obviously, and I noticed from graduating high school, or even before then, you had to take those MAP and ACT tests. So where exactly is the growth when it comes to those test scores?
It was a MAP, MAP, Measures of Academic Progress, actually measures growth. It measures growth for students from fall to winter and then spring, and it projects how students will do on the end of the year SC Ready test. We also have another test that projects growth, and that's iReady. And it tells us, it projects just similarly to math, how kids will do. Yes, and then all those things are preparing students in elementary and middle school for their high school experience and that college and career readiness that we know by the time they graduate high school, we want them to be proficient.
Well, what percentage of students, say for instance, at Wando High School actually scored a C or higher on the algebra, biology, or English gateway course assessments for the end of course for the 2022-2023 semester?
So we have finished our end of course exams for this year, and those results are embargoed. The South Carolina State Department of Education has report cards, and actually most of this information that you're asking now can be found on that website, on school report cards, where you see the percentage of students scoring C or higher on those end of course exams.
Now, do you foresee any more exams being taken away or added because of this new formula?
I don't. So the state, the WSF is a local initiative. Okay. The state regulates testing.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, I know obviously you've taught in classes before, obviously. So let me ask you, when it comes to, say, for instance, Wando High School, what's the average experience for a teacher there?
You know, Quintin, I just don't have those demographics, that sort of information. Average experience of teachers. I'll capture that down,
Okay.
and we'll circle back with you.
Now, you mentioned, Superintendent, earlier about the SC Ready test scores. So what exactly are the gaps right there in those test scores that you all want to improve on in the next 5 to 10 years?
So it would be the gaps between student groups, one, and just the gaps in between the various levels of student scoring meets and exceeds and not, approaches and does not meet. So we need to close those gaps. In fact, Quintin, we need to keep those gaps from ever existing from early education.
Where exactly are those gaps right now in this district?
Well, they exist. They exist in various arenas. As I suggested, there are gaps between student groups, and then there are just gaps in students' individual measures of learning in ELA and math, science, and social studies.
Now, obviously, a lot of the kids take plenty of tests before the end of the semester. So, how much, for instance, does the school district actually spend on standardized tests?
I'm not sure what our investment is, Quintin, in math. It would be math. The state provides, testing, but like in our formative assessments and that sort of thing, benchmarking, I don't have the dollar number on that. But it's a very important way to track students' progress and to help us know before the end of the year what we need to do with students to get them ready for the end of the year and for the new year.
And for the new year, yes, ma'am. And obviously, there's been a big talk in the South Carolina State House for from 2020 up to now about class sizes. So let me ask you this, Superintendent. Small classes would raise student achievement by what percentage in your mind in Charleston County?
So there's a lot of mixed data, to be very honest with you, Quintin, about the positive correlation between student achievement and class size. I would suggest that smaller class sizes are certainly better to allow for more individualized attention, but there's a whole body of research that suggests that student class size isn't necessarily positively correlated to student achievement. So we try to make our classes as small as they can be, just because we believe students get more individualized attention that way.
How small is too small when it comes to class sizes, and how long should that small class initiative stay in effect?
I really can't answer that one, Quintin. I'm not really sure. It all depends, frankly, on students' needs. If you've got a group of students who are students with disabilities, the smaller that class size, the better. See, so it varies based on the needs of the student, the learning gaps that exist, and what other challenges the student might be experiencing.
Well, let me ask you this. Where exactly in the district do you see those achievements when it comes to students with disabilities?
So I am proud to say that many of our students with disabilities are making more gains than we've seen in recent past. And we measure those things in different ways for these students, Quintin. Most of those ways are defined in their individualized education plans, or IEPs, as our public might know them referred to. So we measure their progress throughout the year on various tasks that they're able to complete, as well as reading and math.
When it comes to the teachers, Superintendent, how many teachers have you all lost in the past 2 years?
I'm not sure exactly how many students or how many teachers we lost last year, Quintin. I believe we hired about 600 new folks last year, and I think we're on track to hire maybe a little less than that this year. But we always hire. I mean, we're a very large school district, as you know, the second largest in the state. So every year we hire a large volume of new employees for various reasons. Retirees, people, mothers wanting to stay home with their families, or people just looking for new jobs or a career change. And we very much respect that and want to support people where they are. But we are optimistic that we may not have to hire as many this summer than we have in the past.
Now, when it comes to that, how many people are actually being hired locally versus out of the state?
Again, I don't want to speculate and give you numbers that aren't accurate. Sure. We try to hire locally as much as we can. Okay. So I can consult with Bill Brigman and get you those numbers.
Now, how should the school district, in your mind, Superintendent, actually increase the retention, say, of effective principals?
Oh gosh, we want to keep every effective principal, teacher, employee we have. And that comes not only through adequate compensation, but making sure working conditions are fair and good for employees. For example, Quintin, we're looking to expand employee daycare opportunities to North Charleston next year, like we've done on the peninsula, like we've done over in West Ashley. And so, those are some things that staff have, has given us feedback that we can do to improve working conditions. We have now included in the budget, for example, common planning time for teams to be able to sit and plan together. The feedback on that has been extremely positive. So I'm optimistic that we're doing more in CCSD ever before to make conditions strong and favorable for all employees that serve our children.
And quickly, I have 2 minutes left, Superintendent, but what effective results have you seen from that particular planning initiative so far?
Very positive outcomes. When employees are happy, kids are happy, and kids achieve. So we want to do all we can, Quintin, to retain effective employees, and we do that by treating them well, making working conditions favorable, and paying them a livable wage so that they can live here, raise their families, and be happy.
I want to get to that in the fall because there's a lot to talk about in depth with that. But when it comes to the retention rate, what exactly is that right now in Charleston County?
I believe, Quintin, I believe it's upwards mid 80s percentile, but I've written that down here.
Okay.
I'll get it back to you.
Oh, no worries, no worries. And when it comes, well, I got maybe 2 minutes left. The Zoom is saying.
We should have planned 2 sessions, Quintin.
Yeah, we could. Maybe I'll bring the camera down the street and do it next time.
That'll be just fine.
Oh, yes, ma'am. But where in Charleston County can you all actually acquire infrastructure to have workforce housing for your teachers?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that. We are working right now collaboratively with the Chamber of Commerce. We're working with, regularly. I'm proud that I serve alongside really, really strong mayors, and I met with Mayor Cogswell. In fact, he and I met just today. I met with Mayor Burgess just yesterday. It's been a while since I've seen Mayor Haney, but the 4 of us meet regularly, and I meet independently with them. And a topic of conversation of our last meeting, the 4 of us, was affordable housing, workforce housing, because we realize that it's a challenge for people to be able to work and live in the communities where they serve. And so it is something that we're working on right now with our Chief Operating Officer and with our great partners. It's going to take an ecosystem of support to transform the system, and we're determined to do it.
What current public-private partnership would you be in favor for creating that affordable housing or workforce housing for your employees?
I'm open to just about any public-private partnership that would help us create conditions that serve our families and our employees' families well. And so, again, we're meeting with several different partners right now. We've talked a little with our board about this, but I've discussed it with the mayors of Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, and the city, because that is their goal too. And when we can unify in a common way to support families and kids, we're going to do that.
Charleston County School Superintendent Anita Huggins, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
I'm honored, Quintin. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.